Hello, my name is Eric. Today I will be discussing my Latino perspectives reflection using the four C's and connecting it to the module readings. First, let's start with connections. While going through the materials, I noticed that many of the ideas about family literacy connected naturally to things I have seen in bilingual households. In the article by Rivera and Lavan from 2012, the authors explain how Latina immigrant mothers participate in activities like parent and child together time and ESL classes to support their children's learning. Even though my own experiences are different, the idea that learning at home often happens in informal ways felt familiar to me. Literacy does not always look like reading a book, for example. It can be conversations, explanations, and the everyday ways families teach their children values and communication. I also connected with the idea of Moody and Matthews' article from 2022 about using wordless pictures book with bilingual families. They explain that these books allow everyone in the family to participate, regardless of their English level. When I read that, it reminded me of how my own family often understood stories visually or through discussion, rather than depending completely on written words. It showed me that literacy is broader than it seems. Next, let's go to challenge. One idea I want to challenge in the assumption that Latino parents are less involved because they may not participate in school activities in a traditional way. Rivera and Lavan mentioned how teachers sometimes misinterpret limited English or limited availability as lack of interest. But I believe this is a misunderstanding. Many Latino families work long hours or don't feel comfortable with the school system. But that does not mean they care less. Their involvement simply takes a different form. I also want to question the generic reading practices described by Moody and Matthews. These practices are usually designed for monolingual English-speaking families, and they do not always match the realities of bilingual homes. I think this creates a bias that makes it seem like some families are not doing enough, when in reality they are supporting the children in other meaningful ways. Continuing to concepts, one important concept I want to keep from these readings is the idea of family literacy as assets, which was highlighted by Paulik and her colleagues in 2023. The research on home visits shows that when teachers learn from families, instead of trying to correct them, it creates better understanding and better classroom practices. This stood out to me because it shifts the focus from what families supposedly lack to what they already do well. Another key concept comes from Castro and her colleagues, who describe how family literacy programs must adapt to the cultural and linguistic diversity from Latino communities. This matters because Latino families are not all the same, and programs must take their differences into account instead of generalizing them. And finally, let's go to changes. After completing this module, my perspective has shifted. Before, I mostly thought about literacy as something tied to school tasks like reading, writing, and usually homework in the form of essays. Now I see it as something a bit broader because it's inherently tied to culture and how every family decides to mingle with it. And Latino families are definitely one of the ones that take the most effort because often there's going to be a bilingual effort there. It's very hard. And it's something that's tied to culture, communication, and of course, everyday life, especially at home. If I were to work with families in the future, I will approach them with more understanding and less assumption, as truly assumptions are a bane for families and people in general. You cannot judge a book by its cover, of course. I will try to learn more about their own literacy practices and give them space to use their own home language without feeling judged, as many families might feel the need to feel uh, a bit more restrictive on professional settings like schools. And lastly, overall, the readings help me better understand the strengths of Latino bilingual families and encourage me to think more openly about what families' literacy can look like.